We usually think of the world map as a finished puzzle. Look at a globe, and the borders seem perfectly drawn, dividing land masses into neat, contiguous shapes. But if you look closely, the map starts to fracture. Look at this high-resolution aerial view of Rome. Right in the middle of the city, you will see a distinct architectural boundary. That wall completely surrounds Vatican City. It is an entirely independent sovereign state, locked inside a single Italian city. To understand how unusual this is, imagine a typical house. Usually you share a property line with 3 or 4 different neighbors. Now imagine your house is trapped entirely inside one giant fenced-in yard owned by someone else. That is the difference between a normal landlocked country and a true enclave. The term enclave entered diplomatic language in the 16th century. It comes from the Latin word inclavatus, which literally means shut in or locked up. These geographic anomalies have immediate, real-world consequences. For the people living inside them, being fully enclosed by a foreign power dictates their daily commute, their local economy, and their basic legal rights. The opposite of an enclave is an exclave. Think of it as an orphaned fragment of a country, geographically separated from its motherland and left outside its main borders. You don't need massive mountain ranges to create one. Take a look at this shelter along the Vennbahn Railway. This narrow strip of land creates an incredible geopolitical headache. The Vennbahn is technically Belgian territory, but as this track winds through the countryside, it intersects the German border, effectively slicing off tiny, isolated pockets of German land. These orphaned pockets possess a bizarre dual identity. If you live in one, your land is an exclave of Germany, but because you are entirely surrounded by Belgium, you also live in an enclave. This logic can be pushed to an absolute extreme. This abstract diagram illustrates a theoretical matryoshka doll of borders. M stands for the mainland, S is the surrounding state, E is the enclave, and CE is a counter-enclave. It is a border nested inside a border, nested inside a third border. This actually happens in the real world. If we examine this specific survey map of the Dahala-Kagrabari complex on the India-Bangladesh border, you can see how these nested boundary lines fracture local fields, huts, and dirt roads. The distinction between the inner enclave and the outer exclave is the boundary where theory meets reality. It is the specific legal friction that dictates how these isolated communities actually survive. But what happens when an enclave isn't totally surrounded by foreign dirt? What if it touches the ocean? Geographers call this a semi-enclave, and there is a strict mathematical rule to define it. The inland border separating the territory from the surrounding state must be measurably longer than its ocean-facing coastline. Then there is the opposite geographic problem, the Pene-Enclave. The prefix pene comes from Latin, meaning almost. These are territories that physically touch their own motherland, but the connection is completely blocked by impassable natural terrain, like a mountain range or forest. Before modern engineering, geography was an absolute barrier. This is the Alaska Highway under construction. Built when reaching the Canadian Yukon took 22 months and nearly killed those who tried it. For decades, the only viable way in was to detour through the United States. Modern solutions favor industrial brute force. This tunnel in Spain's Val d'Aran represents a massive engineering intervention. By drilling directly through the Pyrenees, the valley was finally linked to the Spanish mainland, effectively disenclaving the territory. Ancient geography dictates the initial trap. Human engineering and a whole lot of dynamite eventually dictate the escape. So who actually drew these convoluted, broken borders in the first place? The first major cause dates back to the pre-Westphalian era, the Middle Ages, long before modern nations existed. Feudal lords acquired land through inheritance, war, and marriage, trading towns and valleys like poker chips. This created scattered allegiances instead of contiguous nations. The second cause came much later, the massive arbitrary line drawing of European colonial empires. Look at this vintage map of Africa. You can clearly see the sharp, unnatural straight lines drawn by foreign powers. They carved up the continent blindly, ignoring natural geography and creating thousands of exclaves completely detached from their European motherlands. When those colonial empires eventually collapsed, the arbitrary lines remained. Stranded fragments of territory were left behind, locked inside newly independent nations. Today's messy map is not a perfectly planned system. It is the lingering scar tissue of dead empires and forgotten feudal contracts. Knowing how these lines were drawn hundreds of years ago is one thing. Living across them today is a completely different logistical reality. Consider the difference between an island and an enclave. An island is separated by open international water, a physical obstacle. An enclave is separated by an impenetrable wall of foreign legal jurisdiction. This photograph of the Sani Pass border control post shows exactly what that looks like on the ground. For the enclaved state of Lesotho, the surrounding host state of South Africa dictates the tariffs, checks the passports, and physically controls road access. And here is a photo of a heavy razor wire border fence belonging to the Russian Federation. It highlights the physical threat and severe militarization that can define a separated territory. Yet in other places, the reality is bizarrely domestic. Contrast that razor wire with this photograph from Barley Hertog. Here, an international boundary literally cuts right through a cafe's outdoor sidewalk seating. A map is never a finished product. It is a living, breathing record of human compromise. The next time you look at a globe, look past the smooth lines and hunt for the glitches.